Do you believe it's all over? The last of the true. The last of the true. I'd say they're all gone under now, saving me and thee. Would you not? Plenty of time for the trend.
I ain't following no trend.
You're here for the trend.
I got to go.
Go? Who would not be an author if they could? It's a great thing, the book. Drink up, drink up. This night, thy soul may be required of thee. Was it always your idea that if you did not speak, you would not be recognized?
You seen me.
I recognized you when I first saw you, and yet you were a disappointment to me then and now. Even so, at the last I find you here, with me.
I ain't with you.
Not.
What would I want with you? I came here same reason as anyone.
And what reason is that?
To have a good time. Everybody don't have to have a reason to be someplace.
That's so, but order is not set aside because of their indifference. Let me put it this way. If it is so that they themselves have no reason, and yet are indeed here, must they not be here by reason of some other? And if this is so, can you guess who that other might be?
Can you?
I know him well. This is an orchestration for an event. The participants will be apprised of their roles at the proper time. For now, it is enough that they have arrived. As the event is the thing with which we are concerned and contains complete within itself its own arrangement and history and finale, there is no necessity that the participants contain these things within themselves as well. In any event, the history of all is not the history of each, nor indeed the sum of those histories, and none here can finally comprehend the reason for his presence. For he has no way of knowing even in what the event consists. In fact, were he to know, he might well absent himself. And you can see that that cannot be any part of the plan, if plan there be. A ceremony, then, one could well argue that there are not categories of no ceremony, but only ceremonies of greater or lesser degree. And deferring to this argument, we will say that this is a ceremony of a certain magnitude, perhaps more commonly called a ritual. A ritual includes the letting of blood. Rituals which fail in this requirement are but mock rituals. Here, everyone knows the false at once. Never doubt it. That feeling in the breast that evokes a child's memory of loneliness. Such as when the others have gone and only the game is left with its solitary participant. A solitary game without opponent, where only the rules are at hazard. Don't look away, we're not speaking in mysteries. You of all people are no stranger to that feeling. The emptiness and the despair. It is that which we take arms against, is it not? Is not blood the tempering agent in the mortar which bonds? What do you think death is? Of whom do we speak when we speak of someone who was and is not? Are these blind riddles, or are they not some part of everyone's jurisdiction? What is death if not an agency? And whom does he intend to ward? Look at me.
I don't like craziness.
Nor I, bear with me. Look at them now. Pick someone, anyone. That man there, see him? That man hatless. You know his opinion of the world. You can read it in his face. in his stance. Yet his complaint that a book's life is no bargain masks the actual case with him, which is that books will not do as he wishes them to, have never done. Never will do. That's the way of things with him. And his life is so balked about by difficulty, and become so altered of its intended architecture, that he is little more than a walking hovel, hardly fit to house the human spirit at all. Can he say, such a man, that there is no malign thing set against him, that there is no power and no force and no cause? What manner of heretic could doubt agency and claimant alike? Can he believe that the wreckage of his existence is unentailed, no liens and no creditors? That gods of vengeance and of compassion alike lie sleeping in their crypts? And whether our cries are for an accounting or for the destruction of the ledgers altogether, they must evoke only the same silence, and that it is this silence which will prevail. To whom is he talking? Can't you see him?
Anything. Hal never witnessed a human holding a tool.
A book seeks its own destiny and no other, will or nil. Any author who could discover their book's own fate and elect therefore some opposite course could only come at last to that self-same reckoning at the same appointed time. For each book's destiny is as large as the world it inhabits and contains within it all opposites as well. This desert, upon which so many have been broken, is vast and calls for largeness of heart, but it is also ultimately empty. It is hard. It is barren. Its very nature is stone. Drink up. The world goes on. The straight and the winding way are one. And now that you are here, what do the years count since first we two met together? Memories are uncertain, and the past that was differs little from the past that was not.
I've been everywhere. This is just one more place.
Did you post witnesses to report to you on the continuing existence of those places once you'd quit them?
That's crazy.
Is it? Where is yesterday? Where is my website? The Amazon reviews? And where is Runix, Lauren M. Davis? Where is Lanny Sarum, whom you left to the mercies of the internet? With whom you spoke when you were a friend anointed with the blood of the enemies of the book you'd elected to defend?
I guess you can tell me.
I tell you this, as content becomes dishonored and its nobility called into question, those honorable authors who recognize the sanctity of blood will become excluded from the trend, which is the creator's right, and thereby will the trend become a false trend and the creators, false creators. And yet there will be one there always who is a true creator. And can you guess who that might be?
You ain't nothing.
You speak truer than you know. Hear me. There is room on the shelf for one book and one alone. All others are destined for a night that is eternal and without name. One by one they will be cast into the darkness. Books that trend, books that don't.
All right. So I don't know how much this is going to interest chat, but I've had a revelation recently talk about Lightlark and what the process of publication was for that. Because on our show, we usually don't talk too much about like the drama and whatever kind of controversies that create some of these books, because we're two people that like really care about the craft of writing, and to mire ourselves in that, I just feel like that would, I don't know, that would break my little heart, I think. But I understand that, like, as far as we know, Alex Aster is just like a TikTok person who got really, really lucky.
Yeah.
She was making these TikToks of like horribly, horribly reductive, if even accurate, let's just say they were reductive synopses of different parts of her book. And they have like gotten all this traction, and then suddenly she got picked up by some big traditional publisher, Abrams, which I think, so she had her middle grade phase, and that was also trad-pubbed, question mark?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so she's been around, but like Abrams is like big leagues, been around since the 50s, and the story there is really interesting to me, and we'll never know because she will never talk to us. But all this is to say, this will probably be pretty dry, but I wanted to show you guys this thing that I found, and I swear to God, I don't remember how I came to find this video. I have cut it up. It used to be an hour. I'll post the full link in chat or something, because I think it's really interesting, and it is the only time my business major has ever felt worth it in my entire life. Is this interview with the CEO of Abrams, which is Alex Aster's publisher. And she basically, without saying Alex Aster's name, tells the story of how publishing has gotten to this point and what the mentality was behind publishing Lightlark in the first place. So I want to see if this will work. I've put burned on captions. Again, I'll try to pause and keep it interesting. But so
we're like real streamers now. We got to stop the video and comment on it.
Right. We're commentary drama streamers moment here at SBU. Who you're about to hear is Mary McAvaney, who is the CEO of Abrams. And the other speakers aren't important. The woman is the moderator of the event for the New York Book Forum. And the male speaker is just some rando from the Q&A.
Okay, there's so much overlap because readers don't just read one genre. Readers read everything, right? And so it became, initially when I thought I was going to look at consumer data, I'm like, okay, this group is always going to read romance and they're never going to read anything else. And that wasn't the case. They read everything.
Already, I need to pause it because that's important there. It's not particularly egregious, but we go straight from a customer to they are never going to read anything else. She is going into this, even though she talks about being proved wrong, she goes into this from a very rigid, very reductive mindset. So already I'm like, okay, lady.
And so we'd have to dig really far to find the few things that they weren't reading. And then we'd know, okay, we can start there. We know they're never going to pick up this kind of book. And so we'd start segmenting them that way.
I hate customer segmenting. It gives me such heebie-jeebies.
Sort of rooting around in the data until you find how you can start to classify them.
Where do you start to build that base? Because if you're creating all these profiles, which are great, so that you can figure out how to market so specifically to a person, how do you know where to start?
It was hard to find that starting place, and we struggled with it. So we start by sending everything to everybody. Right?
This is so weird to me. It's like she actively wants to funnel people into this.
Right.
I don't know, this pigeonhole, I guess, where they're just reading the exact same stuff over and over and over again without any variety. Because then, if you know that they'll read it, you can keep selling it to them.
And like a funnel, her approach is bigger to smaller to smaller to smaller, and she'll use specifically the word winnowing in a second.
Yes.
Which I think is very, very sinister.
Winnowing is such a weird word. I didn't think about that at the time, but it is literally reductive. She's trying to reduce people's, or she seems interested in using data to reduce people's options.
Yeah.
Can actually track their purchase behavior. And then what you have is a mailing list, again, of people with multiple interests. And you start having to think about, okay, I now have all of this. I have to figure out which of the books I'm going to put in front of them the most often, because they'll buy 25 different categories and my newsletter is only going to have one or two. And so how do we start winnowing down
the kinds of books that you put in front of them?
I don't think anyone can deny.
Okay. I don't think anyone can deny that the forum of social media has changed the landscape of marketing. Might have been cool to say in 2009.
We receive
literally,
but also how we market. I think we talked a lot about getting data from.
Check this part out. This is something I know from insider information.
Things like that. Turning the lens from retailers to social media. How do you take the data from social media and turn it into something relevant?
It is changing, and the different platforms are changing constantly. I know that there was a time when Facebook, for example, provided an enormous amount of data.
Every time I rewatch this video, I think about how much more human it would be if instead of saying consumers, she would just say readers.
Yeah, anything else.
Content, she would say books. Because that is what she's talking about. It would be more specific and more accurate to say those things. But instead she chooses to use this corporate ease that's just so off-putting.
Awful. And The progressively less data thing that she's talking about, that's called GDPR, that's called CCPA, and they're based. This is some of the best things that have happened for internet consumers in a long time.
Progressively pulling back the amount of data that they provide, at least provide us, for a very long time. So it becomes smaller and smaller. And it
becomes harder to target because you're not stealing all of our crap.
To find the kind of audiences you want. But I think my approach with social media, as with many things, is how can we harness that to bring a consumer
into our
ecosystem so that
I'm trying not to be a boomer right now, but I feel like one of the best parts of the book buying experience is not even necessarily going into a store, although I do prefer that, but having like just all of the books and you get to look through them and decide what you want. Like maybe you go to a particular section or a couple of different sections in a bookstore or an online bookstore, but like the process of looking and of discovering and of finding something that you maybe didn't expect or didn't go deliberately after, that's like part of the fun. And so this like targeted marketing thing is, at least for me, like totally antithetical to the way that I want to engage with literature in particular.
The way that you want to engage.
Part of social media.
Yeah, she's literally, or the model, I shouldn't pin it on her. The model
no.
is trying to take away choice.
Yes, yeah, and therein lies the problem.
Bring me a consumer that I'm going to develop a relationship with and continue that relationship. Now, I know that that's a small part of what social does right now, because when you look at TikTok,
here comes Alex.
You look at the power behind Booktok, and you look at all these authors who have created enormous audiences and demand for their books, that's mind-blowing. And
she says.
Unfortunately, right now, we have not been able to deconstruct or reverse engineer the data on TikTok. So that's
key. That is key. That is corporate speak for we have no idea how TikTok works. We cannot brandish it as a weapon the same way that we were able to do with Facebook or Twitter or all of your like old social media platforms. They do not understand TikTok. They can't touch the data in there. They just see these people doing stuff and try to react to it. They are blind to that kind of data.
Again, becomes the choice of, do I try to build my own audience?
Yes, it's a black box to studies.
Abdicate the relationship to TikTok? And I think right now you can only do both. Right? You're going to have to.
And by do both, she means abdicate the relationship, but just act like you didn't.
Audience, because that is the lifeblood of publishing.
Yeah, I guess it is the audience.
But in the meantime, take advantage of whatever TikTok is doing, whatever your authors are doing, whatever platforms they have, we take full advantage of. And you have to. But it's a short-term gain.
Take advantage of whatever audiences are doing, whatever your authors are doing.
Alex Aster, case in point. This is a Q&A session. This is just kind of funny to me. This isn't particularly transformative on the subject, but I'm very interested in her response to this question. Rare. So this is some random guy.
So my experience with data has been, my feeling is that it doesn't have to lead to like kind of a winnowing, and it can lead to expanding, and taking risks and things like that, and leading you into new and more productive areas. But also my real practical experience with how people use data and analytical tools and things like that is that it does tend to lead to that winnowing and narrowing. How do you combat that?
We don't.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually haven't had that experience. So it's good to, it's not good to hear, but it's important to hear that aspect of people using data.
So she just kind of goes on from there. What I want to impress upon you, dear chat, is that the concept of maybe taking away people's choices is bad, possibly, is completely alien to this corporate entity. It has never occurred to her. She's never encountered it. She has no idea how to respond to this. And I find that deeply, deeply telling. Put that in comparison to how little they understand Booktok. And a complaint I have, and my personal algorithm is a little bit better about this, but my English Club podcast algorithm on Instagram Reels, for instance, sucks. Because it is all of these people who I will never read in my life making like adult Shrek like inspired romances with very, very strange content in them. And after watching this interview, putting this next to each other, I would take 100 Alex Asters and I would take 1,000 Shrek adult romances if that meant that I wasn't put into an ever compressing box. That's worse. What Abrams wants is worse than what TikTok is doing.
Yeah, TikTok like boosted Alex Aster, someone who was not ready to publish Lightlark. The thing though that's key for me as a reader, and more specifically as like a literature reviewer, critiquer person, is that Alex Aster, and I assume also these hypothetical Shrek writers, like actually really are passionate about the thing that they're writing. And that they wanted to write it, and that TikTok is giving them a space to advertise them doing work that they want to do. I think that is so preferable.
Right. My experience with Booktok is expansive. I don't like it. I'm not saying that suddenly, oh, I'm gung-ho pro TikTok, but there are people out there who want worse things for us as book consumers. And I think that's important to know.
I'm also pretty skeptical of TikTok and like the sort of like trends that it creates and the reasons that it creates trends around certain books. But at least those choices are being made by people, at least we hope, and not by like faceless entities that are, like we've been saying, trying to limit what is available for us to read.
Yeah. And what's that thing with Jughead in it? What's that Jughead monologue that's like, I'm weird, look at me. Would anyone wear this hat? From Riverdale. Yeah, that's how I feel. Like, I'm weird. I like weird things that don't match up in a funnel. Mary McAvaney has no idea what to do with me. And I don't want her to do anything with me because I don't fit in. If you try to analyze my clickstream data, like, you're not going to get a clear picture of what I would be interested in. And whatever TikTok is doing, for as bad as it is for society, at least it's different.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be a poet if I had been pigeonholed into like reading or engaging only with certain types of literature. Because like I actively was someone who would avoid poetry before I started writing it in undergrad. Which, yeah, if I had been funneled into fiction ever increasingly into like more specific, more limited types of fiction, I never would have become a poet, which has made me so much happier and a much better writer and reader. So possibilities, choices, agency, those are always good things.
Lightlark, for all its flaws, they said, is a decent idea. And that's how Alex sold it. Alex was like, oh, I have this idea for this Hunger Games ACOTAR, and people jumped on it. It cannot escape notice, friends, Romans, countrymen, that the second Lightlark came from good idea to bad book is when Mary McAvaney got her hands on it.
Yeah, when there was suddenly pressure to produce a product. Like I think initially the series started with an idea that Alex Aster wanted to write, and then suddenly there was like real material pressure on her to actualize that idea, like before the trend went away and then before the publishers were not interested in her anymore. Because certainly Lightlark would not have sold without kind of having already sold, if that makes sense. If she had tried to query it traditionally, there's no way. Or it would have taken a while and a lot more revision, which probably would have been good for the book in the long run, but bad for Alex Aster's immediate financial runaway success.
Someone asked me how I felt about like this tendency to put trope tags on everything. And it, on one hand, you can use it for evil with the funneling thing, but in and of itself, I don't have a problem with the way that it's TikTok and things like that have taught us to consume media, because Alex Aster is a risk I'm willing to take. Your ability to identify the tropes in a book are not an indicator of whether or not that book is good.
I like that it makes things like searchable and indexable. I think that's pretty cool. I don't love when it, or the way that it can maybe turn things into like consumable aesthetics almost, like, but I don't want to be cynical about it, so I don't want to say that like, that's what it does and that's horrible. But like you said, you don't have to be evil about it.
You don't have to
choose
be
not
evil
to be
about it.
evil.
I personally am not allowed to say anything about consumable aesthetics, as I try to build a giant consumer booktuber wall full of crappy novels and albums that only I like. So, glass houses.
Yeah.
But just think,
of course, we as content creators are doing the same thing. To a degree.
Yeah, famously, Moby Dick has a one bed left trope, a fake marriage trope, a religious trauma bonding trope. There's a lot. You could do this for anything. The self-isolation part is a little bit of a problem, and it kind of goes back to the funneling, but I just feel like we could just be smarter about it.
Yeah. If people choose to be smarter about it, then that solves the problem, I think.
Yeah.
But if they can't make the choices because they're only shown the same 3 books over and over again,
right?
Then that's never going to happen.
Well, I don't think Lightlark is like any book that we've ever read. But...
That is so true. It is really one of a kind. Can you imagine a world where reading books is like Spotify, where like you put on shuffle and it just always puts you down one of the same 3 tracks over and over and over again, and you can't get out of it? Maybe, is that just my experience with Spotify?
Well, okay, so yes and no. I kind of excited about that. My Spotify algorithm, when it works, is really on point and expansive. Turns out I had a revelation recently that I don't watch Fantano, but apparently I just keep getting recommended Fantano albums, and I just did not realize this. But like, I got recommended like Quebecois indie or like folk music from all the way around the world, things that I would never have actively looked for myself. This and Spotify's evil, like Spotify's bad. I'm not saying Spotify good by saying this, but I'm saying their mentality of taking an expansive approach to keep me in and keep me looking is better than they're like, oh, Andrew likes swans. Let's play the worst music imaginable for him constantly. Or Andrew likes Empress Theresa. Let's only recommend him outsider art.
Dude, I feel like that's exactly what it does for me.
Really?
It's like Jay likes Zoomer indie rock. Let's just recommend them the same album they've already listened to 3 times this week. Listen
to better music. I don't know what to tell you.
Actually, maybe that is the problem. Maybe they're like, you need to be quarantined.
Nova's playlist would ruin anyone's TikTok algorithm, and I can prove it because I would listen to each song as I went. So for the entirety of December, my Spotify was just awful.
Has anyone made a Nova's playlist on Spotify? I'm actually going to look for it right now.
I hope not. I really hope not.
Well, I looked it up, and the first thing that came up was our podcast episode.
Based.
So, maybe it just knows that I've listened to our podcast on Spotify before, or maybe we are the preeminent scholars of Nova's playlist. More so you than me.
That's kind of what I want out of this project, is I want to be the preeminent scholar of some obscure book. Empress Theresa, I think someone's made a wiki for that, so whoever made that is probably a better Empress Theresa scholar than you or I. But we do have a chance with Nova's playlist as the only 2 people who have ever read that book.
We may well be.